Behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which thou hast, that no man take thy crown.
Alright guys, despite so many diet fads that sweep across this country every year, obesity plagues 30% of Americans. Now you can blame it on the fast food industry or lack of exercise, but have you ever considered that diet foods themselves might be part of the problem? Now let me explain. The most prevalent artificial sugar on the market is aspartame, which is also recognized as nutrasweet or equal. Aspartame is in over 6,000 products, including almost all diet sodas, chewing gum, frozen desserts, yogurt, and even vitamins and cough drops. But the FDA approved it, so it must be safe, right? Because if we know anything, that the FDA cares about our health. So this is your aspartame 101. All right. It was originally discovered by GD Searle, which was later bought out by Monsanto, our favorite company. Later, it spawned off to form the NutraSweet company. Now, while waiting for final approval, the FDA commissioner analyzed some of Searle's aspartame tests, which he said were, quote, at best sloppy, and, quote, revealed a pattern of conduct which compromises the scientific integrity of the studies. Compromising scientific integrity, meaning that Searle's tests were so flawed that they actually found tumors in rats, but instead of reporting the tumors, they cut them out and discarded them. Yes, that did happen. Well, the flurry of debate about Searle's tests prompted the FDA to establish a public board of inquiry, comprised of independent scientists to rule on safety issues surrounding NutraSweet. And in 1980, the board concluded that NutraSweet should not be approved, pending further investigations of brain tumors in animals. But there's more. Check it out.
The circulation of the brain and the veins and arteries of the brain, there's an enzyme that can convert methyl alcohol into formaldehyde, and in the human breast.
Monty says that means an increased risk of breast cancer. This chart shows how breast cancer has risen along with the increased use of aspartame.
So knowing that Searle purposefully falsified tests and there's data supporting a rise in cancer directly linked to aspartame, you might be wondering, how did this chemical actually get approved? Well, enter Ronald Reagan. After the FDA's Board of Inquiry halted aspartame's approval, Ronald Reagan became president. And his transitional team, which included Donald Rumsfeld, CEO of Searle, then handpicked Dr. Arthur Holhays Jr. to be the new FDA commissioner. And in one of his first official acts, the new FDA commissioner overruled the Public Board of Inquiry's recommendations and authorized aspartame to flood the food market. Later, Arthur Hole left the FDA and took a position with Burson Marsteller, the chief PR firm for both Monsanto and GD Searle. Conflict of interest much? It's revolving door politics at its best. And over the last 30 years, aspartame has made its way into thousands of food products. And despite its sordid past, weight-conscious Americans will likely still opt for products containing aspartame because it's marketed as a weight loss aid. But ironically, studies have shown that consuming artificial sugars actually increases appetite, sugar intake, and weight gain because the empty sweetness makes your body expect food. And when food doesn't arrive, your body gets hungrier and you tend to consume more. So here's the lesson. Before you reach for that Diet Coke, think about this. While the FDA claims to be checking up on aspartame, you and I need to be checking up on the FDA. The most prevalent artificial sugar in our food supply today is called aspartame, which is also recognized as nutrasweet or equal. Aspartame has made its way into more than 6,000 products, including almost all diet sodas, chewing gum, frozen desserts, yogurt, and even vitamins and cough drops. 200 times sweeter than sugar, aspartame is a combination of two amino acids, aspartic acid and phenylalanine. Even though the safety of aspartame has been affirmed by the Food and Drug Administration 26 times over the past 23 years, the FDA receives more complaints about adverse reactions to aspartame than any other food ingredient in the agency's history. In fact, at least 30% of the U.S. population is sensitive to even moderate doses of aspartame and may suffer several symptoms. Immediate reactions include severe headaches, dizziness, attention difficulties, memory loss, throat swelling, and seizures. Long-term effects include blood sugar problems, insomnia, diabetes, ovarian cancer, and brain tumors. One study done at King's College in England found that the more nutrasweet is consumed, the more likely it is for tumors to develop. And there's still more.
He is a neuroscientist at Washington University School of Medicine. His new study analyzes U.S. brain cancer data in the years before and since aspartame's approval.
There's been a striking increase in the incidence of malignant brain tumors.
Dr. Olney does not say flat out that aspartame is responsible for the rise in brain tumors, but he does believe that his analysis of the data shows that it's the most likely suspect, because he says many researchers have discounted other environmental factors. And Olney says the same types of aggressive brain tumors that showed up in the aspartame animal studies over 20 years ago are now increasing in the American human population. Aspartame was discovered in the mid-60s at G.D. Searle, the Chicago drug company. Searle was bought by Monsanto and then was spun off to form the nutrasweet Kelco company. The FDA originally approved aspartame back in 1974, but FDA investigators soon found serious problems in some of the studies that Searle had submitted to the FDA, and so a task force was organized to investigate many of Searle's tests.
There were some very serious deficiencies in the conduct of some of those experiments.
Dr. Eric Millstone is a food safety expert at the University of Sussex in England. He's been a critic of Britain's approval of the sweetener for over a decade. He says that Searle's tests in the early 70s were so flawed, there is simply no way to be sure that aspartame is safe.
Well, for example, a rat died during the course of an experiment, but apparently that rat was not then carefully dissected to see whether there was any evidence that the compound might have killed the rat, and there were many other deficiencies in the conduct of these tests. Tumors appeared in some of the animals and they were simply cut out and discarded, not reported. There were occasions when antibiotics were administered, but that was not reported.
All of this by G.D. Searle?
G.D. Searle and some of the companies working under contract to G.D. Searle.
Because the FDA task force found so many discrepancies in Searle's data, in late '75, the agency put the approval on hold before aspartame could hit the market. The FDA commissioner back then called the test at best sloppy and said their investigation revealed a pattern of conduct which compromises the scientific integrity of the studies.
In 1980, the Public Board of Inquiry concluded that aspartame should not be approved, pending further investigation of brain tumors in animals. The following year, Ronald Reagan became President of the United States. His transitional team, which included Donald Rumsfeld, CEO of Searle, then handpicked Dr. Arthur Hull Hayes Jr. to be the new FDA commissioner. In one of his first official acts, the new FDA commissioner overruled the Public Board of Inquiry's recommendations and authorized aspartame in dry foods and carbonated beverages. In fact, the National Soft Drink Association urged the FDA to delay the approval of aspartame in carbonated beverages because of its instability in liquid form.
So why am I pouring a Diet Cola into a hot pan? Well, the heat simulates what happens in your body when you consume aspartame, breaking it down into toxic formaldehyde. Food scientist Woodrow Monty explains that the aspartame molecule contains a precursor to formaldehyde, methyl alcohol.
In the circulation of the brain and the veins and arteries of the brain, there's an enzyme that can convert methyl alcohol to formaldehyde, and in the human breast.
Monty says that means an increased risk of breast cancer. This chart shows how breast cancer has risen along with the increased use of aspartame. That conversion into formaldehyde could also mean multiple sclerosis. With MS, the body attacks the nervous system and scars the brain. Plus, this Chinese study found that even extremely low doses of formaldehyde damage the brain's memory proteins.
It can start changing its structure and the way it folds, and start producing strange misformations and malformations, the same kind of malformations that we find in Alzheimer's disease.
Arthur Hull, the FDA commissioner who pushed through aspartame, later left the FDA under allegations of impropriety and took a position with Burstyn Marsteller, the chief public relations firm for both Monsanto and GD Searle, revealing his apparent conflicts of interest with aspartame's manufacturer.
Here's the truth about your diet soda. It tastes like crap because it's made from crap. Genetically modified organism feces, to be specific. I'm talking about the synthetic sweetener aspartame. The patent for it is now online for everyone to see how it's actually made. And it's actually made from the poop of GM bacteria. Here's how it's made specifically. Genetically modified E. coli bacteria are cultivated in tanks. They defecate proteins that contain aspartic acid phenylalanine amino acid segments. That feces is collected and then treated through many chemical processes, including methylation, which adds the toxic alcohol methanol to the mix. Presto! Aspartame is made. So if you like that unique chemical taste of aspartame and don't mind eating bacteria feces, it means you are free to consume so many foods and not worry about ingesting any calories, God forbid. Aspartame is in your breath mints, cereal, chewing gum, flavored water, ice creams, coffee syrups, juice drinks, power bars, pudding, ketchup, yogurt, vegetable drinks, candy, and pretty much anything that has the word diet in its name. And that includes, of course, Diet Coke. Interestingly enough, Coca-Cola has just spent a lot of money to produce ads telling you how safe aspartame is. In their ad, they say that the safety of aspartame is supported by more than 200 studies over the last 40 years. As sources, they list the Beverage Institute and the International Food Information Council Foundation. Coca-Cola owns the former, and the U.S. government is a partner for the latter. For further information about the safety of aspartame, you can visit aspartame.org, which is owned by the Calorie Control Council, which is an international association that represents the food and beverage industry. In other words, the safety information about this sweetener poop is controlled by those who profit most from it. Hardly unbiased. Meanwhile, there are hundreds of studies which link aspartame to leukemia, lymphoma, other cancers, liver damage, you name it. So if you're trying to decide whether or not you should ingest aspartame, consider using this as a rule of thumb. If it's literally made from chemically altered GMO crap, it might be crappy for your body.
Janet Starr Hull says aspartame caused her potentially fatal thyroid disease in the early 90s. She wrote Sweet Poison describing her affliction and recovery. And those experiences motivated her to investigate the 1998 FDA approval of another artificial sweetener, Splenda, also known as sucralose.
Everything that we had warned about aspartame, please don't do it. Don't give it to your child. Don't use it during pregnancy. Don't give it to the elderly or those that are sick. We're having to say the same thing about Splenda.
The FDA says the agency looked at 110 sucralose studies in humans and animals. They concluded many of the studies were designed to identify possible toxic effects, including carcinogenic, reproductive, and neurological effects. No such effects were found. Hull disagrees about what those studies found.
Cancer in the laboratory, mice, had hind leg paralysis. The male rats had infertility issues. The female rats had aborted fetuses and problems during pregnancy.
Her doubts about Splenda focus on the fact that it's manufactured from sugar by adding 3 chlorine atoms.
How much chlorine, how much do you consume every day? Do you consume your swimming pool? Do you drink that water when you swim?
Hull says the more you use, the more you lose, with potential asthma and breathing difficulties, sinus issues, even bladder and kidney problems. Again, the government says no problem. The body can't even digest Splenda. Hull disagrees.
They're even saying in some Japanese studies it can digest up to 27%. So what you're looking at is the body really is going to break this down into chlorine.
With serious concerns about splenda and aspartame, what about saccharin? After all, it used to carry a cancer warning. In the 80s, aspartame products even advertised no saccharin. However, it's been around for more than 100 years. It's the only artificial sweetener Monty uses because it won't break down into threatening chemicals. Still, he uses it sparingly.
If we make that food that doesn't taste good, whether through sweeteners or artificial flavorings, is that a good thing to do? We're fooling our bodies. You don't want to fool nature.
With the continuing concerns about artificial sweeteners, experts say natural sweeteners, in moderation, may be the best option for health-conscious consumers. Galen Tethrow, CBN News.
Stevia, a sweet herb, has been used as a natural sweetener in South America for the past 1,500 years. It's non-caloric and is 25 times sweeter than sugar. Tests have shown that stevia intake actually helps regulate blood sugar, inhibits tooth decay, aids mental alertness, improves digestion, and users of stevia even report less desires to smoke tobacco or ingest alcohol. Today, stevia is finally on the market after a decade-long FDA ban due to NutraSweet's heavy lobbying influence. You can buy stevia as a dietary supplement at any Henry's or Whole Foods.
He which testifieth these things saith, Surely I come quickly. Amen. Even so, come, Lord Jesus.